This lesson, we will be looking at how to use Skelegons to build structures to pose our characters when brought into layout. So it all begins here in Modeler. So go ahead and open up Modeler if you're following along. To demonstrate this, we're going to start off by creating a very simple object with a box tool. So we're going to go to the Create tab. We're going to select the box tool. We'll start in the top view, and then we'll drag out a thin rectangle. I'll switch this over to wireframe so you can see this a little better. And then in my back view, I'm going to come down and I'm going to go ahead and extract this a little more. And so we have kind of this thin box shape. Let me just tighten this up a little bit, thin it out, so it's a little bit more expressive when it poses. Something like this would be great. Now, if you don't see all the mesh that I see here, use the keyboard, the arrows on your keyboard to add or subtract polygonal lattice work here to the front and back. And I'm using the back view to put my mouse. In order to do this, I need my mouse. It's important that my mouse is over the back view window when I use the arrow keys, right and left, and then up and down to add or subtract geometry. Something like this should be fine. This should give us enough geometry to work with when we're posing our character in layout. I'm going to hit the return key to make that. And now I'm ready to go to layer 2. Come over here to your layers, click on layer 2, put layer 1 in the background as a reference. And I'm going to work in layer 2 so I can add Skelegons to layer 2. This way I'm separating the Skelegon elements from the mesh. I'm going to go to the Setup tab over here. Click on Setup tab and you should see a tool called Create Skelegons. Create Skelegons. Click on that tool and I'm going to come back to the back view here, and to make this bigger I'll just hit the full screen button and zoom in a little bit so you can see this better. And now I'm going to start in the middle of my character. It's important when we're building skeletons or bone structures that we think about the middle of our character, the waistline of our character, the center of gravity for whatever our character may be, regardless of what kind of animal or character or creature it is. So I'm going to be trying to give somewhat of a human type of a shape to this skeleton. And even though it's an abstract shape, it's very simple. We're going to have a back, a couple arms, and a couple legs. So I'm going to start with the upper half by clicking right here in the middle and dragging upwards with my left mouse button. Now I'm not letting go of my mouse button until I'm happy with the length of this new Skelegon. And I'm just going to drag straight up. It's about halfway. That should be enough. Now if you make a mistake and you're not happy with it, you can always use the small delete key on your keyboard to erase the Skelegon that you created. Now it's important to note that I clicked and dragged with my left mouse button to create what would be the root or mother bone or the parent bone to the child bones. And so this is what we do when we first create the upper half. For the children, I click without dragging. So I click once here, click again there. And that gives me an upper arm and a lower arm, or an arm and a hand, depending on how you want to look at it. Now I've got 3 bones in a chain, and I still see the orange highlight here, indicating that I'm in template mode. So I hit the return key to make those Skelegons. So now I've got the parent bone here, which is the backbone, and then the 2 children bones here. Now to double check that these are all connected properly, I can go to my Skelegon tree button, open that up, and just check to see that all these Skelegons, which are named bones, 1, 2, 3, are all hierarchically connected. I know that they are because they're indented. This would be the root bone or the parent bone, which is the upper back. This would be the upper arm or arm bone, and this would be the hand or lower arm bone. So you can see by stair-stepping, that indicates that they're all interconnected and that these are children of this parent. All right, now to continue a chain, in other words, if I want to make another arm that uses this upper backbone as a parent, I need to select it first. So I go to Polygon Edit Mode, and I select that polygon or that skelegon. Now I'm ready to make more children from this, so I go to the Create Skelegons tool once again, and then I click once, click twice. And now I've got another arm connected. Hit the return key to make it. Again, I can go to my Skelegon tree to check to see that the hierarchy is correct, and I can see because these two bones are both at the same level, both indented from the first bone, that I know that they're correct. Now, if you want to take an extra step, you can rename these bones so they make more sense to you. You just come over to this here on the Skelegon tree, double click it, and give it a new name such as upper back. Now, I could do that with the rest of these, but I'm not going to because I'm going to show you another method to rename the bones later. Alright, let's continue. So now I want to do the same thing with the lower half of my body. I'm going to go to the Create Skelegons tool once again, and this time, again, just like the first time, I'm going to click and drag downward, and I'm not going to let go of my mouse until I'm happy with the length. Once I've got this about halfway, there's my new parent bone for the lower half of the body. Now I click once, click twice for my first leg, hit the return key to make it. Once again, I select that lower backbone, just like I did with the upper back, and now I create Skelegons once again, and then I click once, click twice to make the children, hit the return key to make it, and again I can use my Skelegon tree just to verify that yes, the hierarchy is there, there's my root, and these are my child bones connected to that. At this point, I can then check it. I'm going to go to my quad view and just see that yes, it is centered, it is in the middle of my mesh. And that looks pretty good there. I can zoom in here for you a little bit. And there we can see the inner workings of our armature and it's built inside this mesh. It's important before we send this over to layout. One thing final step we have to do is to cut and paste these Skelegons into layer 1. So I'm going to select layer 2, go to edit, cut, just like a word processor. I'm going to cut and paste, go to layer 1 and go to edit, paste. And now everything resides in the same layer. Okay, zoom back out to my quad view, hit A for auto fit, and I can see now that my character is now ready to send over to layout. So let's do that. I'm going to save my character. Let's call this, I'm going to go to save object as. Let's do that. Save object as, to give it a name. We'll just call this box with Skelegons. Save that somewhere safe. And I'm going to hit save. All right. So now I've got my objects file saved. But before I go into layout, let me just remind you that, or just state here that Skelegons are cousins of bones, but they're not the same thing. Skelegons only exist in Modeler. They do not exist in layout. In order to make use of Skelegons from Modeler, we have to go to layout and then convert the Skelegons into bones, which we'll do next. Just want to be clear on that. Another thing I want you to be aware of is that these Skelegons are fully editable as you would edit normal polygons using point and polygon edit mode in Modeler using various tools such as weld, move, rotate. You can use your standard tools and even delete them if you wanted to. Okay, let's now go over to layout. So it's send it over. I'm going to come over to my upper corner and say send object to layout, and there it is. Now you'll notice right away that even though this is shaded, here we go, there's no actual Skelegons or bones in there. Because as I was mentioning, there are no Skelegons in layout. You have to convert the Skelegons into bones. So what you do is you go to the same tab, you go to setup, the setup tab, just like we saw in Modeler. And you're going to see that there is a tool called CVT Skelegons under the add menu. Convert Skelegons, or CVT Skelegons for short, is the way that we convert all of the Skelegons in this particular layer into bones. So when we cut and pasted those Skelegons into layer 1, we made our life a little bit easier by putting them here, and so we can just go ahead and activate them. So we'll hit convert Skelegons, and there they are. Now they've been turned into actual bones. And if you can't see your bones after pressing this. Even after you cut and pasted your Skelegons into layer 1, verify up here in the view menu that you have bone x-ray checked. If bone x-ray is not checked, then you will not see these blue Skelegons, or these blue bones, as they are now bones. So let me go back and change this from wireframe to a texture shaded solid. And as long as this is on bone x-ray, you can see right through your skin, even if it's shaded. You can see from all angles there. Okay, so this now shows me that my Skelegons have been converted into bones. If we're not sure about that, I can click on the button down in the bottom here for the bones category and just be sure that yes, indeed, I do have a lot of bones here. You notice that the first one is called upper back because I renamed it using the Skelegon tree back in Modeler, but I did not rename the other ones because I said I had a better way to do it. So let's take a look at that method. I'm going to go to the scene editor, our good old friend, the scene editor, click open the dope editor, the top option, and I'm going to open up these triangles here where our object is located to see that the whole structure, the whole hierarchy of my various bones that have been created. So in doing that, now I should be able to then view the correlation between the bone here in the scene editor and the bone in my object. So you notice when I click on these that it highlights the bone. So the reason I like it renaming them better here is because I know exactly which bone is which, and if I have several bones, it's not difficult to figure out what I'm naming. Whereas in the Skelegon tree, it doesn't do that, so it's a little more confusing. So in this case, for example, I know that this is the lower back, so I'm going to go to manipulate. I'm going to right click with my right mouse button on the bone name, choose manipulate from the pop-up menu and choose rename. And then I'll just choose lower back. Then I'll use my arrow key to scroll down, or I could just click here to make it simpler. I think it's easier that way because then you can see the correlation between what's highlighted in yellow and what's yellow here. So in this case, if this character is facing forward, this would be the right leg. So I will rename this right leg. And don't worry about spelling or capitalization or any of that stuff. I'll just call this right foot. And you get the idea. I won't rename the rest just to save time, but just be aware you can go through now and name all the different bones. Let's now check and see if they actually work. So the first thing you need to remember, the most important rule in regard to bones in layout is that you never want to move child bones. If I move the parent bone, then I'm able to move the entire group, and it's not the end of the world. I may have situations where that would come in handy, but for the most part, bones are designed to be rotated, scaled, squashed, or stretched. So what I'm going to do most of the time is simply rotate them. So I hit the Y to see my rotation handles, and then you can see now I can get various poses using these rotation handles. I can make the character wave using the hand or the arm. And you can start to get fine-tune and sculpt some detailed poses with this. I can make the character bow, lean back, etc. Whereas if I was going to move the character, rather than moving the bones, I would move the object. So I would come down here to the object select mode and simply move the entire object. You notice the bones come along for the ride. So I can move the character into position and then start to rotate these bones to pose it. So select the bone you want to select and then start posing the arms and legs accordingly. Now you notice it's very polygonal in terms of the way it's bending and deforming. You see all those polygons are very visible. I didn't go to my surface editor and I didn't bother to smooth it, but I can do that simply. Just go over to my different surfaces and smooth them out. I'm not sure if I used bone or default, so let's just do them both. So that gets a little bit better. And also just be aware that if we subpatch this character, it'll look even smoother. But with the surface editor, at least we turned on smoothing for both of our surfaces, so it made it a little bit better. And If you want, you can also check it out in VPR mode. Of course, you can't edit in that mode, but you can get a better sense of the shading. Now, one thing I'll point out before I wrap this up, and that is you'll see that there's something here that's an issue. And you'll notice that you often get this with bones inside of layout that are vertical, usually parent bones, but you notice here I've got these two vertical bones that are on the y-axis, and you notice both of them have gimbal lock here. We have an issue where the bank and the heading are both on the same plane, and we're not able to rotate in all three axes. So we should be able to do it like in this case, this bone, you can see I can do the heading, pitch, and bank, and I can get the full range of motion. Here, my heading and bank are locked in together, so we can fix that using a technique to correct the gimbal lock. You notice there's also a problem on this bone, but not on the others. I will demonstrate that technique on a later lesson, but for now we'll leave it there. Just this is the basic lesson on how to use Skelegons and convert them into bones for your character. We'll see you on the next tutorial.